Welcome to DJN TV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Welcome to tonight's show. I'm so excited that you're here joining us because tonight we are going to do awesome things. That's right, grit your piece of paper. We're going to learn origami.
Man, you've got the wrong guy. Actually, my youngest daughter has been like doing origami. She's even creating some of her own origami stuff. So it's so funny that you would say that. But she's not even home right now.
It's not, no. So we had a chance to have some. This could have been our greatest show ever. We would have had some real talent on the show instead of you and I.
I know. After 5 years, finally we get to actually 6 years. I saw a show we did 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah. We started that
like yesterday. Yeah,
2014.
Oh yeah, she's done some pretty cool things. Like I don't know. I could do like a paper airplane, but she's actually folding some. Chris, what else are they gonna do? They've been homeschooled, and now it's summer school, right? So
that's pretty much what we've got.
Summer vacation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, around our house, it's become summer school because we have.
She has taken to putting together puzzles upside down, so the image is not up. She's just literally looking at the brown, the paper back of the puzzle. Yeah, and she'll do 2 or 3 of those a day now.
Can we say that she's using the Force because that would be pretty cool?
Yeah, and I'm talking like 500, 600 piece puzzles. Like the 2,000 piece ones, she'll still have the image facing up. But I sit there and watch her do that, and I just, I don't know. I'm mystified by it.
Oh, man.
So no origami tonight, no puzzles tonight. What can we do that I can do? Because I'm lacking in skills.
Well,
so
Plan B, I wanted to talk about the monitoring, listening to our mixes, listening to our sound. For some of you, you kind of knew that I did a virtual prom, streamed that about, seems like a lifetime ago. And because we did it in the office and I was using a studio mic, I had to keep the volume down. And I had a dickens of a time feeling that my mixes were on because I had the speakers so quiet. And I could have used some better monitoring for me, but then the microphone issue. But people going into the summer where we're not going to be playing as loud as we traditionally would or could.
Says who?
Yeah. Well, there's going to be situations where we cannot do what we've done in the past. So this weekend's wedding or this weekend's event that I'm going to be doing, they don't want the volume that high. They want to have the evening, but they don't want the volume the whole night, but they want the volume down so they can have conversations around the area. I'm thinking to myself, I need to have a way to monitor, to be able to listen to my mix better and not give me a problem where I'm going to have problems with controlling sound. So I figure I'll bring this to Ben Stowe, and Ben Stowe can tell me what I should be using to monitor my mix and not have it so it's blaring for the guests.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that what you hear should be on par with what they hear. And DJs, I think, have it a little bit easier than live sound because the music is more or less produced, and obviously there's some really talented DJs out there that are very much mixing musically, but there's a little less of a sonic difference, in terms of creating a mix of instruments. So I think that gives you a little bit of leeway. One of the coolest memories that I have is doing a show at Target Field. But there was also a game. And so the stage was in the outfield and the audience is then in the stands. And for those who don't speak Minnesota, Target Field is where the Minnesota Twins play. It's Major League Baseball stadium.
Remember baseball? That was the thing that we used to have.
Yeah. Remember that back in the day, they had, bases and bats and balls.
They spit.
Some people are probably wondering if the Twins are in fact Major League. They are. Yeah. They even won 2 World Series long, long ago. But anyway, so how do you mix a band in the outfield for people that are hearing it on the stadium PA?
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, at the front of house tent, there was a mixing board, and then there was simply a pair of speakers, and that was what was used to put the mix together. When it comes to monitoring what you're doing, I think there's several ways that people tend to monitor things. One is your headphones. Good, bad, whatever, but headphones are one of the ways that we can monitor things, whether that monitor is for cueing purposes or if it is for listening to what we can't hear. And again, the closer that the replication of the monitor to what's going out the mains, the more useful it's going to be. Another way that people will often monitor DJs is they'll do something similar to what I was describing at the front of house tent in the outfield from Target Field, where you can have booth monitors. And sometimes these can be a speaker on stick pointed at you, and sometimes these can be a wedge kind of firing from the floor up at you. And then, of course, circling back kind of to the headphone thing, but would be an in-ear monitor where it's a headphone, but it's really more of an earphone and it goes into your ear. Personally, I'm a big fan of the custom molded ones because they're a lot more comfortable and they block more outside sound, which means that level doesn't have to be as loud. A critical thing about IEMs, I just want to say before I turn it back over to your questioning and whatever, but I see this more often than not. Many artists want to have both. I shouldn't say more often than not. I don't see it more often than not, but I do see it often enough that it's noteworthy. Many artists want to have stage wedges and in-ear monitors. And part of that is because the in-ear monitor is certainly going to give you good replication and good, isolation from the outside sounds, but it doesn't have the feel. It doesn't have the presence. And so sometimes they want those monitors just so they can feel the sound a little bit as well as hear it. And one of the critical failings that I see artists do is they take one out. And this is my cautionary don't do that. When you do that, think about being on the phone in a loud environment. If I'm on the phone, I'm trying to block my other ear so I can hear better. Mm-hmm. So when I do that, when I've got one in-ear monitor in and the other one out just dangling, I'm going to have a real temptation to turn up both the in-ear and the stage monitor, because if I'm trying to hear both, they're really competing with each other. And as a consequence, we lose that hearing protection value of having the in-ear monitors maybe not as loud. In other words, it's a really good way to damage your hearing.
Sure. Yeah, I could definitely see that, because just using headsets, for speaking on a cell phone, how that doesn't work that well many a times without both of them in.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned on numerous times here so far in this, trying to get as close to replicating the sound that people are hearing. And you've mentioned a variety of different tools that we could use for hearing sound. Mm-hmm. Obviously, some are going to be better at replicating that sound than others. Can in-ear monitors give us a sound that would be even close to what's coming out of the mains of our system?
Probably. It depends on how accurate your mains are, because the in-ear monitors, depending on the quality of the in-ears, and there's oh my gosh, that's a week's worth of shows in the difference there. Single driver, multi-driver. Some of them have as many as 7 drivers inside of a little thing that goes in your ear.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah. You can spend crazy money on in-ear monitors, and I don't think you have to. But the point is that in-ear monitors vary. However, what they tend to be is much more accurate than, for example, just a set of earbuds that you might have. And that's another cautionary note about headphones too. Headphones, some of them are not very accurate at all. They're very, very, tilted, maybe, a lot of low frequency or something in a headphone. They've contoured that sound for a particular listening experience, and that does not make them good monitoring headphones or good mastering headphones. In-ear monitors, by contrast, tend to be a lot more accurate. So to a degree, I think it kind of depends on your mains. And I suppose there are ways that you could EQ one to match the other a little bit. But at a minimum, again, you're not necessarily building a complete mix of 20 or 30 or 40 mic channels. So I guess it depends on what you're monitoring for. Certainly the best thing you can do is go out and listen to what the audience is hearing. Mm-hmm. Walk out there and take a listen to what they're hearing. If you're doing something like using an FM transmitter, I would recommend having an FM receiver and tune into that once in a while and listen to your broadcast and see how that sounds. Try to get as close to what the user is hearing as possible. And then you can start to balance that with your monitoring so that they're sort of I can't think of a word, but that they agree with each other,
Right there. Yeah, cool.
And sometimes you can't. And so you have to do some mental calculation. And I just, my mind was stumbling on a word because I was actually thinking about some shows where I've had to do things where the mix position was so bad, that what I was hearing was really different than what the audience was hearing. And that's never good. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that's the way it happens, and particularly in smaller venues in earlier days, and you're thinking, okay, So I just got to compensate from what I can hear because that's not what they hear. So I just have to adjust my mix, so maybe it doesn't sound good to me, but I'm compensating, and I walk back out to where the audience is and I'm like, yeah, okay, good. I got that, maybe I'm in a power alley for low frequency and I'm like, wow, it's really bass heavy, but it's not for the audience,
Sure.
So I just have to know that that's the case and vice versa, whatever. Obviously it's much, much easier if you can just get what you're hearing to match what the audience is hearing, then your work is a lot easier.
Yeah, certainly would be. So moving from, if a person were going to be going the in-ear monitor, to give a person a ballpark of pricing, that to get an idea of what something like that, if they've never looked at those, what kind of money would they expect to be kind of thinking about budgeting for that to get a decent quality system?
You can get, and I'm working in round figures here, but
just
if you're comfortable using just the kind of generic fit, rubber sleeves or foam sleeves, I think you can get a pair for under $100, maybe even 50, $60. I'm trying to think what the kind of the entry point is to a decent set. Certainly $100, and you can spend several thousand.
wow.
Getting multi-driver, custom molded, that's where, it just, the crazy happens. But actually a guy was just giving me a hard time today because we were talking about headphones. And I mentioned the headphones that I have that are a few $100s a piece. And I said I had a couple pair of them. And he's like, oh, that must be nice. And I'm like, yeah, but this is how I make my living. This is my job, So it's, like, you tell carpentry has too many, hammers or too many screw guns, right? And I have these for various reasons. And so, if you're talking about somebody who is, a Grammy winner or a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer or a touring working artist, to have a couple $1,000s into in-ear monitors that you're going to wear 200 days a year, I don't know. That's not crazy at all.
Sure.
When you think about that, I just got done watching the Garth Brooks documentary, The Road I'm On, which is pretty cool. And you think about, okay, so in one night, he plays for 80,000 people, if he's got a couple grand into a set of in-ear monitors, what's that? Nothing. Jump change.
Yeah. Not for what he's doing.
Right. So it's all relative, it's all perspective. And again, even a cheap set of in-ears is going to sound better than than most earbuds. That make a big difference there in my mind between a consumer earbud and a in-ear monitor. Accuracy is what we're going for here.
So let's move to headphones now, whether it's over the ear or on ear. How difficult is it to find something in that realm that would give us a close representation to what is coming out of the mains?
Well, here again, some of them are designed for a listening experience. I'll pick on Beats, I guess, but if you get a set of Beats, it isn't going to sound like your mains probably. They have very much, a tilt in the sound, whereas you can get into more accurate, mastering headphones. A couple that I really like are like the Vimoda M100 Masters. The M200, I think, was voted the most audiophile headphone. Certainly Sennheiser has some great headphones, 380s. The M50s, ATH M50X from Audio-Technica, fantastic headphone, where those are really pretty good. But if you're running a set of 12-inch two-way mains and no subs, those headphones are going to sound richer and fuller than your mains are. Just fact.
Sure.
They're designed to give you that listening experience close to your ear. So again, you have to reconcile that with your system individually. It has two parts. One is how accurate is the headphone in terms of what you hear versus what's being played. But two, and critically important, is what do your mains sound like? I just had a conversation today about doing something for an outdoor concert for a parking lot full of cars, and like 200 cars. First of all, that's a lot of PA. Second of all, how do I reconcile a sheet of glass in front of everybody? How do we provide a good listening experience to everybody who's behind glass? And they said, well, what about an FM transmitter? Well, now we're at the mercy of those car stereos. The listening experience will certainly not be the same between any three people, So it's a really difficult question to answer. I think the best thing, like I said, is to listen, listen to the headphones, listen to the mains, make some adjustments. If you're lucky enough that you have the ability to do some EQing on your headphones, which probably nobody does, then you could make some of those adjustments to try to make the headphones sound like the mains. But I think in this case, maybe we're not as worried about sonic quality or clarity, because a few trips out to where the audience is going to give us an idea what's happening there. We're probably more interested in level, having some sense of, how loud we are, where we can't hear. And again, calibrating a monitor, if you, just maybe a booth monitor in that case, and you say, okay, that's fed off my mains and it's relative. So when this is loud, that's loud,
Sure. Well, let's talk about the booth monitors.
Okay.
Since you opened that door, let's go right there. There's a couple of different things we want to talk about: placement and size, because when we've been at some of these conventions, I've been talking to some of the DJs that have been on stage, such as DJ Times, and some of them are like, yeah, I'm okay with anything. Some like, I've got to have a 15-inch two-way, or this, that, they're very specific on what they want for sizes and such. And so let's talk about placement and why size might matter.
Well, I'm thoroughly convinced that some DJs have lost all of their hearing or all of their common sense. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, because I find this, kind of all over the place. I've worked with some globally touring DJs, and some of them want two double 18s per side and a stack of line array boxes per side facing them from just mere feet away. We call that Texas headphones, but and the amount of sound pressure that rig is capable of producing is, we could probably cause internal bleeding or something. I don't know. I just don't understand that. I think that's almost more about flexing your rider than it is about the necessity to hear. I don't know. But a really fascinating experience for me has been doing some of these big stages with different DJs, and invariably what I've found, and if you're viewing, take note, invariably what I found with the same set of monitors, in this case, this was the monitor for these DJs. Each side had a ETX 18 SP sub and an ETX 35P top. So that's a lot of firepower to be 3 feet away from your head on both sides. So we had a significant amount, and it wasn't the crazy, rig I just talked about, but that's pretty crazy. That's more than most DJs bring as a main to a show.
Right.
And this is what we had for booth monitors for these DJs on this stage. And then of course we had the big PA for the audience. What I found almost invariably was the local DJs and the opening acts were clipping, their output to me, because they were sending an output to me, which I then sent back to the monitors. So I kind of had control of everything, try to save them from themselves, if you will. It almost invariably they were clipping that, and they would just keep driving and driving and driving, even though I knew that they had to be experiencing incredible sound pressure, and I don't really know why. I don't really know why. And here's the contrast. Almost without exception, all of the nationally or globally touring DJs did not do that. Their levels for the monitors were much lower. They gave me a clean monitor signal, and they also did not drive the monitors as hard. And I think that's something that resonates with what I see in the live sound world too. The pros just know how to use their gear, and they don't need to have their hearing destroyed night after night. They know what they need in their monitor, and they get it, Sometimes, though, what is going on here? Well, don't tease me. Get it in here. Thank you. Is this the animal cracker one?
It is.
I told our son I might take him for one tomorrow night. Well, he's going to be bummed out.
Man.
That's delicious. Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
Well,
So we're going to take
that's the show. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're going to take a little bit of a pause while Ben eats his ice cream, because we've done this show where the ice cream melts, and there's sadness after the show is over.
Yes. I had to do an entire show on cleanup.
Yeah, 2 weeks
So real
later.
quick, real quick, I'll talk about this from a live sound perspective for two reasons. One, I think it's really good to have a rounded sense of understanding about what monitors are for and how they might be used, and you may be able to adapt that to what you're doing. Two, somebody said they really don't like just watching 30 minutes of talking heads, so I guess I'm just going to troll them for a little bit by adding some more. So
Adding some ice cream to the Talking Head show.
it was last year after I fell and I was injured. And so I was mixing monitors for a well-known nationally touring band, and they've been around a long time, and they're getting a bit up there in age. Mm-hmm. The rest of the band kind of warned me first night, the drummer's going to be your problem. He's deaf as a rock. He's going to be your problem, mm-hmm. you know? And I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I don't like doing monitors anyway, but that's cool. They were nice guys. And so it was all right, you know? And sure enough, he kept more. I need more, you know, and more. And pretty soon I was out of more, you know. I mean, there just wasn't really any more. And these are, you know, pro grade monitors, and any reasonable human being would have probably been wincing in pain. But, you know, fact is he just, you know, needed more. I couldn't hear whatever. So I started thinking about this, and I thought, well, what can I do? I can't give him more. So what can I do to make him happy? And the answer is I can give him less. And I'm going to explain the answer. Instead of giving him more of everything, I'm going to give him less of the things that I really don't think he needs. So I started to try to figure out what he was actually cueing off of, what he was really listening to. And I started to bring other things out of the mix. And I started to trim some frequencies that I thought were eating up energy in the monitor. And, you know, and suddenly he smiles and he looks at me and he's like, yeah. And so I actually gave him less and made him happy instead of more, you know, instead of just hammering away. Because if you think about it, what's the purpose of a monitor? And of course, we've talked about one scenario here where you're trying to figure out what the audience is hearing. But in his case, that monitor is his guide. It helps him to stay with the rest of the band. And it's important because it gives him information about, you know, the music that matters to him. Mm-hmm. You know, some artists will have only one or two things in the monitor. Out of 40 channels coming in, they only want one or two in the monitor. So they're not listening to a full mix. Anyway, just kind of a fun little walk down the psychology of monitor, I think. So I kind of lost track. The ice cream got me distracted, but I think we were talking about booth.
Yeah, we've kind of been talking about having booth monitors. What type placement is? You know, I wanted to talk about placement. Should they be on the floor? Are they better up in the air? And of course, size. You went and talked about some huge monitor systems, which are probably things that most of us will never even think about, doing the 18s, what have you. But
especially if you're doing where your audience doesn't want more sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're trying to do something for a typical event, you know, the whether a wedding or what have you. You know,
monitors shouldn't be louder than the mains. And I think Tommy James and the Shondells, by the way, fantastic show. And Tommy will tell you straight up, this is not an oldies show. This is a rock show. And then he will just proceed to plaster you with sound. But I think that might be one of those scenarios where the monitors are going to be louder than the mains. And it doesn't even matter what you have for mains. The monitors are just going to, I mean, it's, you know, it's like 120 decibels coming off the front of the stage. He's just going to lay it to you. Part of that is, you know, I think there might be some hearing loss there too.
They've been around for a couple of years.
Yeah. Again, dynamite show. If you ever get a chance to see them, just a killer show. But in most cases, your monitors should not be louder than your mains, I think. So the wear, I think this is really a matter of personal preference. I would probably, for this type of environment, I would probably have them up on sticks towards me. You know, and again, that is just a matter of preference. Mm-hmm. Think about, though, if your monitors are also giving you your voice, you know, so if your mic is going into your monitors, think about that in terms of avoiding feedback situations too.
Sure.
And we've talked in previous shows about mic patterns, which mic patterns have better rejection in which directions. So as always, it depends. Me, I think I would probably like them up in the air. Some guys like having that wedge down there, and they're kind of getting it mono at that point. I don't think there's a wrong answer though.
Okay, it's more of a preference.
I think so.
We don't want the ice cream to melt too much, so let's hit size and then we'll bounce. I've seen people say they don't want to see a 10-inch speaker, but those are so nice and compact. They don't want to see a 12-inch speaker because of whatever, but those are a nice size. They want to see a 15. Is there really a reason why they want to have the 15 over the 10, as an example?
Well, I don't want to judge them because that wouldn't really be fair, because I think this is very much a preference too. For a monitor, I'd be very happy with the 10, I think. Especially if I was just trying to monitor levels. I know I'm not trying to replicate the low frequency, whatever, maybe of my mains that has subs and that sort of thing. That's not really realistic. So I think I would be perfectly happy with the 10. In fact, I have a set of ETX 10s that I use sometimes in that scenario. Maybe it's, like the guys that want line arrays on either side of them facing in. They just want a bigger speaker. I don't know. There are certainly different sounds, particularly for vocals. I really like the voicing of a 10 or a 12 as opposed to a 15. I guess you'd have to ask those people though. It comes down to preference, and I won't for a second say that they're wrong.
Sure.
That's the beautiful thing about what we do. Most of the things that we do in terms of performance, there's tremendous artistic license, and the way you do it is the right way for you. When it comes to technology, obviously there's some really hard and fast rules, and there's some things that are absolutely right and absolutely wrong. I don't think this is one of them. I really don't. I think there's a lot of latitude here. I think there's a lot of leniency for personal preference. And I think that you would see, again, in the hundreds of touring acts that I've worked with, I doubt that I've seen two that have exactly the same monitoring scheme. I think it really comes down to preference.
A lot of preference there. Excellent. In the description, gang, there is a link to NLFX Pro's website. You can go there, and I think I had put monitor in there and did a search. But just go out to nlfxpro.com. You can type in either the InEar monitor or the IEM monitor, or you just type in monitor, and it'll give you a bunch of different options for looking at monitor speakers or monitor InEar monitors, wireless stuff. There's a lot of cool options there. Take a look at that, then give Ben a call and say, hey.
Yeah, definitely reach out to us on this. I think if you know what you want, awesome. That's great. Nothing makes us happier than somebody that just puts in a purchase order and makes an order. But we love to help. We love to have the dialogue. So, and this, as we've discussed, the whole show has basically been, this dance around all the options. And I think it's one of those things where you may not know. So let's talk about what you want. Let's talk about how you want to experience this sound. And we can have some of those discussions about what might work better in your scenario. And we're not the least bit shy. Very happy to talk to you about what might work best for your application.
Excellent. Well, gang, we're going to wrap things up so Ben can finish his ice cream before it becomes all melty, because otherwise we have to do a show in 2 weeks called How Do You Clean My Keyboard Part 2.
Again.
So thank you guys for being with us. Top of the hour, we've got Jay and Brian and Nick Hahn. We're going to be talking 80s music tonight. And I asked one of the guys to start kind of getting some of their popular songs that are the forgotten hits from the 80s. And we're going to share and talk about those tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern at the top of the hour. Once again, thanks for being with us, gang. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.